First at 5, victims of child sex trafficking are facing a new challenge because of the pandemic.
When court cases dropped during the initial coronavirus outbreak, so did court-assessed penalties that fund advocacy for sex crime victims and domestic violence victims.
Eyewitness News reporter Marvin Hurst has more on the effort to secure money before organizations and victims suffer on the chopping block.
Victim advocates say they are learning a critical lesson. The Crime Victims Fund in Texas doesn't have enough money to support the organizations that need it.
We are their leading partner for advocacy that gets called when law enforcement interdicts a trafficking sting, or when a survivor is identified at a hospital, or even with CPS.
BCFS Health and Human Services help child sex trafficking victims statewide. They do so with the Crime Victims Fund, which uses court fees to support victim advocacy. But out-of-court settlements kept money from their coffers, and the pandemic took the court penalties away.
This fund, which is not taxpayer funded, but is funded by court penalties, saw a pretty significant decline.
A bipartisan fix from the nation's capital called the Victims of Crimes Act, or VOCA, now secures out-of-court settlements for the fund and shores up court penalties.
It's going to take some time to replenish that fund and have it build back up to what it's been in years past.
Texas organizations that help victims of sex crimes and domestic violence brace for their annual $19.4 million allocations to plunge to $13.5 million on October 1st, the beginning of the fiscal year. BCFS Governor Greg Abbott's most prominent child sex trafficking grantee will lose around $400,000. The loss means trimming 27 jobs and cutting services for 125 child sex crime survivors in the San Antonio area alone.
And the last thing we want to do is have to tell them we have to stop.
The organizations want lawmakers to use $12 to $15 million existing COVID-19 dollars as gap funding until the court penalties top up in 2 years. BCFS is willing to put up some of their own money this year to survive the looming dread of October 1st.
Our organization has offered to even provide a gap for the gap.
Marvin Hurst, KENS 5, Eyewitness News.
The governor's press office responded to us today, saying in part, quote, as Governor Abbott announced in May, he will be calling a special session for redistricting this fall and will place the allocation of the nearly $16 billion in coronavirus state fiscal recovery relief federal funds on the same call. So the entire legislature can participate in the allocation process in a way that best serves all Texans.